Hey everyone, today I wanted to discuss a very pressing matter that I feel explains a lot of the turmoil and suffering we young men face today. And this phenomenon isn't new. In fact, it's been going on for millennia and has continued into the present day. So before we get into the video, I want to ask you guys a few questions. Feel free to pause if you actually want to try. So, what incident triggered the Trojan War? Why was Mark Antony unable to prevent the fall of the Roman Republic? What led to the fracturing of the Round Table and the collapse of Camelot? And why did Bill Clinton bomb Serbia? Now tell me, what do all these events have in common? That's correct. All of these terrible wars, tragedies, and declines feature a woman as a significant catalyst. However, not to sound too conspiratorial, I'm not going to just say outright that the blame rests primarily on the women involved. Rather, as it is the case for most of history, it was the men who had the final say in decision making. But can we really say that they made these choices on their own? And I'm not talking about if they consulted with advisors, close friends, or their inner circle. No, because all of these pale in comparison to the immense influence of women over men. And I know those examples are a bit hyperbolic and some aren't even entirely historically accurate, but the point I'm trying to make is that women have had much more power over men than what history has taught us to believe. Because as you might know, since we've moved away from hunter-gatherer societies, which are more egalitarian in nature, and started the agricultural revolution, there have been much more rigid gender roles and expectations, because work had become more specialized to support the first sedentary societies. And throughout this time, men have held the overwhelming majority of power in setting the precedent on politics, religion, economics, relationships, and everyday behavior. But ever since the 20th century, women have been getting more freedoms, meaning more opportunities to involve themselves in the important matters that have been largely exclusive to men. And I believe we live in an incredibly unique time. I'm specifically talking about Western society because much of the world still adheres to traditional gender norms. But I feel that very recently, maybe not even 10 to 15 years ago, there's been a major shift in how men and women are treated and viewed societally. And personally, I'm not very red pilled. Like, I don't believe in the sanctity of the nuclear family, or that the decline in religion is rotting away our society, and that we need to cling on to our traditional Western values and restoring gender norms is going to be a silver bullet. But the main problem I have, and this is kind of at the core of the video, is that while women are able to increase their opportunities for social status and financial stability, as men, we still have a deeply seated instinct to protect, provide, and be validated by women. And we've usually been able to handle that role because throughout civilization, men were the utmost authority on matters of mate pairing and selection, as a good amount of marriages were arranged. But now, compared to modern times, we're losing power in areas that signal attraction and success to women, such as in education, which lead to reputable jobs, and careers, which translate to earning potential. And I don't want to turn this video into a research paper, but you can look up recent statistics on college enrollment, employment, and median salary. And for men and women in their 20s, at least in the progressive urban areas of the US, women are earning at least the equivalent to men, if not more, in similar roles. So the idea of a man in his 20s being a provider for a woman his age, isn't that feasible, provided that the women today are more motivated to pursue education and professional development and are able to get more out of it. And this is going to sound a bit unfounded because it's based on my personal experience, but I think this is partly due to universities and companies spearheading initiatives to include women, which is within the larger movement of DEI. I remember during my time in college, there were specific departments and centers for women to access financial resources and career opportunities, and there would be special networking events and workshops that only women could attend. Another speculative point as to why college educated women have a higher employment rate is that the majority of human resource departments, which include hiring managers and recruiters, are comprised mostly of women, so there could be some bias in the hiring process. And not to generalize too much, but I do think women are more tribalistic than men. I know there is a stereotype that women are very catty and constantly gossiping behind each other's back, but in our current landscape, men are more divided because of our competitive and aggressive nature, and we're more prideful, so we're not really willing to ask for help or form relationships due to our upbringing. I'm not saying it's inherently wrong to have spaces for women in academic and corporate environments, because they have been barred from these opportunities for so long. What I worry about is that it's looking like it's going to the extreme other end, where young men are being actively discouraged from pursuing the same professional goals because the priority is bringing women our age up to speed. Also, I believe that it's not just women are getting preferential treatment, but they are just better socially adjusted. Early on in women's lives, they're taught to prioritize their appearance. Though it has been negatively reinforced through gender stereotypes, it still has benefited them. And women are taught things like emotional intelligence to a greater degree and are encouraged to have more vulnerable personal conversations with friends and family. These factors better prepare women for the challenges that actually matter in getting into a professional career or a good college, because they know how to actually navigate a conversation and articulate themselves effectively. So men aren't really being taught the skills that will prepare them for today's job and dating market. The advice I was given as a man was very different, and I realized this could be because I'm raised in the US, which has a very individualistic and meritocratic ideals. But I was just told that I need to keep my head down and do the work to achieve my goals. There's no need to rely on anyone else. But that doesn't really work anymore. I know the conventional advice to get a job or a relationship is you just have to keep trying, put yourself out there. But if you don't have the social skills and life experience necessary to excel in these opportunities, whether it be a date or job interview, you're just not going to get any value from repeatedly trying. Anyways, I'm kind of getting off track. The point I was trying to make is that the way social dynamics between the genders are going, I don't really see us heading towards an egalitarian society, but rather a gynocentric one. And I can't really fault women for taking it in that direction if they had the chance, because they've been given the short end of the stick for probably the past 10,000 years, and now the pendulum finally swings in their favor. It's not like men were willing to give women the same rights and opportunities, so I don't see why we should expect women to do the same for us. So, what is my plan to weather this storm? Well, in times like these, it's best to listen to the adage of if you can't beat them, join them. Okay, that sounds really bad out of context, but what I'm trying to say is to go to the side of women. Just because I have an anime girl as my avatar doesn't mean I'm about to start putting she, her in my channel description. And what I'm trying to get at is to adhere to the new gender norms of our society. If young men are becoming blocked out of economic and social mobility relative to our female peers, then I don't mind taking a page out of my ancestors' book before me and embracing my need for a woman's approval, because now it actually appears natural given this shift in power. Yeah, sorry if you were expecting me to give some actual advice. I mean, just look at how low effort this video has been so far. You actually think I have a solution to the fucked up direction our society's going? I mean, what do you want me to do? Invent a time machine and go back to the 1920s and prevent women from getting the right to vote? You can't really expect that Western society was going to remain static for the last century. But as I said, the real surprise was how fast the tables turned in the last decade or so. And I know red pillars are going to call me every name in the book. Oh, you're such a cuck, beta, simp, soy boy, etc. And just speaking personally, I don't really care about things like body count in a woman or if she's been in plenty of past relationships. I already know I have to adjust my standards for things like her weight and facial attraction to several points lower than mine because there's no way in hell I'm getting with my looks match. Not that it would be very high to even begin with. And some others might say, come on, where's your self respect or pride as a man? And to that I say my pride has gotten me nowhere. I know I'm far from perfect, but I feel like I have led a decent life up until this point. I try to take the conventional path to success by getting educated, and while I've engaged in degenerate behavior throughout the years, I never did it in excess to the point where my main priorities were succeeded by that stuff. And all that good behavior was in part driven by this masculine desire to work hard and improve myself so I could have a girlfriend or wife that I could help provide for and share my life with. I feel like even though men in the past have had much more difficult lives, as much of their work was more demanding and took a harder toll on them, they at least had the respite of their wife and family to keep them going, though I am probably just looking at the past through rose colored glasses. But looking back, I realized I never really wanted that, which is probably why I'm so willing to throw my dignity away just so I can get a shred of approval from a woman. Okay, maybe I have some standards in regards to what kind of woman I'd want to date. I don't think I could deal with an open or polyamorous relationship. Not because I believe in the virtues of monogamy, but I probably wouldn't make any moves to date anyone outside my partner because it'd be a miracle that I could even get a girlfriend to begin with. Also, I probably wouldn't be willing to date someone who does in person sex work, but that's mainly because I wouldn't want to be at risk for getting some kind of STD. So, those are the main things. As long as my girlfriend isn't constantly cheating on me, then I'm game. I'll be opening girlfriend applications starting next week. Seriously though, I realize it's not healthy to be emotionally dependent on someone as a source of motivation, but the way things are headed in my love life, I guess I don't have to worry about that. I think this behavior partly stems from my low self esteem and confidence growing up, to to the point where I really don't care that much for my well-being. And admittedly, there is something very alluring in the idea of giving yourself up for another person, especially if you're romantically or sexually attracted to them. But please take everything I say with a grain of salt as someone who's never been in a relationship before, because maybe I get a girlfriend and it turns out to be hell being at her beck and call. But I feel right now in my life where I have no long term goals, everything would have to be internally motivated. I just can't bring myself to start because even if I do succeed, I don't really see the point in improving because I don't really care enough about myself to go through all that hardship. However, if I could just have somebody in my life that I could project that desire for improvement towards, then maybe I would have a reason to continue again. Okay, even I've realized that what I'm saying is completely delusional. There are so many flaws in my reasoning for that, but this is just how I feel when I get lonely and restless. Right now, in my depressive state, I just get kind of needy and desperate for the female companionship that was denied to me in my teenage years, and having these self deprecating fantasies is my way to cope. At the end of the day, you can't really change your environment or situation, except if you actually physically move away, but I don't want to get into geomaxing in this video, so I'm just trying to cope with my loneliness the best way I know how, which for some reason involves weirdly fetishizing the issue. Before the video ends, I want to give a shout out to my 2 subscribers, you guys are real ones. And yeah, I wish I could have put some more effort into the research aspect of this video, but I want to try and put out videos at a reasonable pace going forward, and my microscopic brain can't really deal with creating high quality content efficiently. Okay, that's all. Until next time.